The broadcast is live. All right, so hi everybody. Benny is coming in. He'll be in here anytime soon. So let's just hang tight. Why don't you guys type in the chat and say hi? Tell me where you're from and what language you're learning. Hey, Alicia. Tell me where you're from and what language you're learning. Oh, really? I'm in Hong Kong. Germany. Nice. Hey, Avita. Vita. Learn Korean, USA. Nice. Cool. Nice. Yes, I remember you. I'm in Central right now. Joey? There's another person in Hong Kong in the chat. I'm right below Pure Yoga in Nude. Let's see. This place. Cool. Everybody's learning different language from different places. How cool is that? Danish need to learn German. You're from Brazil. Okay. Good morning, Judy. Thank you for joining us. Alicia from US learning French. Okay, let me see if Benny has any problem getting in here first. All right, since we're talking about language learning materials, right? I was gonna ask anyways before when Benny's here, but why don't we share a little bit about what are your biggest challenge right now for finding the right material for you? It's only 3 minutes, actually it's only 4 minutes in. If you'd like to share, what is your biggest challenge of finding the right material for you? You can also type in to the room, and if you're new, you just got in here, you can share with us where you're from and what language you're learning. You have no money to buy stuff. Difference between written and spoken Cantonese, right? Yes, lots of slangs in Cantonese. Too scared to talk to people. We'll change that soon, Bridget. You did great in your video. It'll just get easier. Doing a video before wasn't easy for you, right? So only get easier. Bridget just joined Add1Challenge. So that's what I'm talking about. Okay, at the moment is grading up my level of Chinese. I can read academic articles. I can't read the news fluently. Huh. So it's not much material, too much information, not much material, too much information out there. So many programs. Okay, don't have money for it. To read Japanese. You know 5 kanji, nice. That's a start. Choosing. All right. English learning, hardest things and faith in the plan. Unexpected natural. Nice, nice. Love these challenges. Keep them rolling in. Finding language exchange with natives due to time difference, no native speakers in the middle of nowhere. Well, I remember waking up like at 5 or 6 o'clock doing my Japanese lessons. So do whatever it takes. There are a ton of materials and the problems I cannot decide. Looks like choosing is a big problem, huh? Oakland, learning Spanish, nice. Time to figure out what's important. Learning kanji. All right. Let's see. What is Benny? I'm not sure. Okay. My problem is not beginning, but grading up, taking it to the next level. Yes. All right. Increasing my Russian vocabulary, tons of materials. So okay, great. So now we have your greatest challenge right now. So why don't you share with me what works so far? Because something has to work, right? So what works best for you so far? Making friends with them when you're just starting out in the language, right? Speaking. Yes, yes. You've done the Add1Challenge, you know, repetition, watching dramas, animates, yes. That's what I do in my downtime, watching some animates in Japanese. Speaking native is actually got really fun. In the beginning it was scary, but like the more I speak, the more fun I get. They're not friendly to it, no Danish speakers trying to speak. Also, I heard different things. I heard what you said, but at the same time, I also heard some Danish people who are supportive. Just gotta find them. Okay, let's see. All right, Benny just said that he was trying to use Android. He was trying to use a tablet, but it doesn't work, so he is going into his desktop webcam. So Benny's coming. Michelle Thomas German Foundation CDs are great at getting me started, but I don't know what to do to take it to the next level. Practicing back channel talking. Okay. What worked for me is studying at home from books and speaking with iTalk teacher, but I have no money for a teacher anymore. And iTalk people to chat with are very unreliable, not serious, horrible internet connection. Yes, you need to find other ways to find reliable language partners. Yes. I have a few ways, but we can talk about that later. Reading basic books in French. That works. Okay, something, right? I see anime, reading basic books, recording and review iTalk session, nice. Speaking with natives. Anything that worked? Practicing back channel. What is back channel when talking with natives? What does that mean? Practicing back channeling. Joey, can you explain? You're learning Cantonese, right? Show in Russian. Nice. Is there a YouTube for that? Let's Learn Japanese, a great series in the 80s. chapter a day on YouTube. Oh, really? I watch at least a chapter a day. Nice. I'm gonna pick up Japanese again soon, since I'm planning a trip to Japan next year. Back channel is like right, yes. Ah, got it. Yeah, All right. So those who are just joining us right now, tell us where you're from, what language you're learning, and what's your biggest challenge with finding the right material for you right now. Benny's coming in soon. Will do. Okay. Yes. Just search, type in YouTube, let's learn Japanese. I think that will probably do it. Sure. Why not? It's kind of like the bridges from one island to another island. If we talk about like each island's topic, I think it's a great time to be alive and learning languages. Yay! There's so many wonderful free and paid resources out there right now. Yes, there are plenty, free and paid ones. All right, I'm on that link. Japanese. Ooh, nice. 26 videos. See, why don't you guys share the best resource in here, since you guys are doing great. That's a great channel that I just got right now. Oh, Arash. Biggest challenge to speak snail slow, and my vocabulary is very limited. Oh, speaking snail slow is still speaking. It's all good, as long as you find somebody who's patient enough to keep up with your pace. Be all good, right? Vocabulary, we all have limited vocabulary when we first started, don't we? Nia, what language are you learning, and do you have any great resources? Can you share with us? Since we're all waiting for, yes, we are recording this. Since we're all sharing, talking about resources, do you have any great resources? Share it in the chat. You know what? We also have a really awesome resources section in the Add1Challenge files. So since you guys are waiting, I'm going to send you guys an email after this call and send you some of the best resources from the Add1Challenge. We have like the best songs, best memorized lessons. So we have a few cool resources that I was to share with you guys. Hey,
how you doing?
Doing good. There he is.
Hey, hold on.
I'm keeping them busy. No worries. People are very chatty.
All right. I have my webcam in a different place to my computer, so I have to click allow and give permissions. And there we go. Okay.
All right.
So, how's everybody doing?
Doing great. I see a couch.
Can you see me now?
Oh yeah, I can see you now. Cool.
Okay, excellent.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. I extremely busy getting ready to go on a big book tour to promote the language hacking courses, and we've been getting everybody set up and emailing a bunch of people with some encouragement for that. And it's very interesting because we've been working on it for a whole year, and now we finally get to talk about it, you know?
All right, so before we talk about it, I just want to say thank you, Benny, for your time. And let me do a quick introduction. Benny Lewis is a polyglot, best-selling author, founder of Fluent in 3 Months, the most popular language learning blog on the planet. And he's also a great dude. I've met him many times. We hung out, and very humble. So I really like Benny and what he's doing. So thank you for thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I hope I can help people out with their questions about how to get started in learning their languages.
Great, awesome. So people shared. So before you got in, I was just asking people what are the biggest challenges in finding the right materials for them. So I think a lot of people are sharing that there's so many things out there. It's very hard to choose. So would you like to say a little bit about that, or you can also share some of your biggest struggle when you first started, and see if people can resonate.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, keeping in mind that there's that whole divide with people, or should I be studying as much as possible, or should I be speaking? And I think the vast majority of people go into the direction of studying. They're like, okay, I'm going to buy a bunch of books. I'm going to learn all this vocabulary. And that's great. But I think for these kind of intensive challenges, the best thing they can do by far is speaking. So a few things that I would do with that in terms of tools is, firstly, I would have the actual teacher. So I would find them on italki. All right. Then for that first week, I would book a different teacher every single day of the week. And then I have my session with them, and we try to speak just in that language. And I'm constantly taking notes, or at least in the chat screen, whether that's in Skype or Google Hangouts, I'm seeing what they're writing, so that after the session, I'm going to go into Anki. And then within Anki, I'm going to create a new deck with these words that I need to know for my next session, whether that's "my name is," "nice to meet you," or the word for or the phrase "I'm Irish," whatever it may be. So italki and Anki, definitely, as I get started. And then there's other, like, in terms of being able to understand people, I do like the podcasts that they do from Innovative Language. So I would generally, for at least like a half hour, listen to one of their beginner lessons. And these would be like Japanese Pod 101, Chinese Class 101, Spanish Pod 101. So they've got that kind of series name. And I hear how those are doing. And then if I have some downtime, I would use an app like Duolingo to ease myself in a kind of gamified system. So the thing is, there are many more apps and websites and tools like that. And ultimately, what you need is something that you know is sustainable, and something you know is definitely making a difference, because you might find something that's a lot of fun, but at the end of it, you've not really learned anything. Maybe you learned one word after like 20 minutes or whatever. So it's a tricky balance, and this is why I have my italki sessions every day, because that forces me to learn something that I know is actually making a difference in how I'm using the language immediately after that.
Got it. So basically, you just lay out the steps of all, like, basically how to do it. So let's talk about how do you know what's the right way for you to learn to speak? Because there's many different ways, right? Speaking, yes, speaking, but anything else that you can see? What's the right, how do you find out?
Well, I mean, from an absolute beginner's perspective, the right thing is just before your first session, if you can, try to use, there are actually a bunch of new tools that have been coming out lately. One, for instance, is Hi Native. So that's an app that lets you, it's done by the same guys as Lang8, and that's completely free. It's an app that lets you kind of test a phrase to make sure it looks good. So I might try to type out, I'm Benny from Ireland, in that language. And then a community of native speakers will come and say, that's right, that's wrong, tweak it this way. So I would do that for a bunch of phrases that added up to a 30-second long introduction. And then I have that introduction, which I know has been parsed by native speakers. I have that in a little text document or written out, pinned to my wall, whatever it may be. And I made a video about this when I tried to learn like just a little smatch of Polish before I went to Poland. And I effectively cheated. And I always tell people it's okay to cheat on that in that first conversation or two, where this isn't me spontaneously talking. I have notes that I'm relying on, you know? And then that means that I know what I want to say to introduce myself. But on top of that, I can, during the conversation, use other things. So essentially, I need to make sure I know how to say, could you repeat that? And could you write that down so that they'll type it into the chat window? And then I can, if I have to, I can copy and paste that into Google Translate. I don't want to rely too much on Google Translate, but I do use it a little bit, and then I get the gist of what they're saying, and I can type my answer into that to kind of say something back. So that's kind of, you know, it's not using your own skills to speak, but you're using these tools as kind of a crutch to give you that extra confidence, because that's what people are missing. And as a beginner, when you start to speak a language, you feel like there's so much that you don't know, that how can you possibly even talk to somebody, because you don't know what you want to say, you don't know how you're going to say it. So I would have anything set up in advance that's going to help me get over those issues of confidence, that's going to help me very smoothly decide in the moment, there's something I want to say, how can I quickly say it, you know?
Cool. So that's like the preparation and also dealing like the emergency tactics of how to deal with the first two conversation. Actually, I cheated. I would continue to use Google Translate as I go, you know? I mean,
yeah, I try to use it less and less, but I think, I mean, it's okay to use it. It's okay to accept that these things will help you smooth out your conversations.
Got it. Okay, so so is that your how you solve the problem of like too many materials out there? You just go into iTalk, find somebody. Either, I mean, there not only iTalk, but there are many different language exchange things. Go there, start talking to people. Great. Okay, so I'm interested about learning more about your new language hacking courses. So I know you partner this with Teach Yourself. How did it come about? And can you give us a little backstory about how this happened?
Yeah, absolutely. So I, over the years, like I've written the other book, Fluent in 3 Months, because I have this general language learning philosophy, which is essentially what I've just been talking about with you. Just like throw yourself in, first, and that'll give you the momentum you need to get that confidence and get moving. And so I figured that that's the best way that I could help people, would just be with that little initial give them that initial encouragement, tips for how to do that. And I didn't really think that I would ever be involved in creating a course, because in my mind, a course is more of this structured, like academic thing where you go through particular units and so on. And I just thought that's not a talent I have, because I tell people all the time, one of my personality traits is I embrace mistakes. You know?
Yeah.
I'm all about just like quiet there. So I did not think that I was the kind of person who would be suited to write a course, because a course has to have structure and avoid mistakes. But then one of the publishers who actually is in charge of the Teach Yourself series, she's kind of the head of that whole course, she got in touch with me and said, Penny, we would love to work with you on a course series that kind of combines what the two of us are good at. Teach Yourself, they are like a subset of John Murray Learning, which is the publisher that published, John Murray published Charles Darwin's Theory of Evolution. So this is like a very long established, people are getting feedback on this sound. If you want to like mute your sound while you're not talking, Brian, might help. Okay, so this is, they published Charles Darwin's Theory of Evolution. So this is like long-term established publisher in learning, and they know a lot about how to help impart that knowledge to other people. But they also wanted to add in a bit of my language hacking ideas. So we talked about it for a long time, and we figured out how we were going to do this, where we would have that structured, like, you know, unit 1, here's conversation 1, here's some questions. So that thing that you come to expect to see in courses, but we also add in a lot of my, what I would call language hacking techniques. And this was kind of, I got to have a lot of fun with this, where I would like use handwriting font in the side and say, you know, pointing to a particular lesson and say, this is important, but don't worry if you make a mistake with this. Here's a little trick to get around it. And that kind of meant that we got the best of both worlds, that we got to follow that structure, but we also gave them permission to make mistakes. And then the whole course was tailored around speaking, so we could really tone down the grammar and spelling things correctly. You know, we keep it there in its minimum necessary form, but we remove the jargon. And then I add in all of these tips, and like each unit is based around one big hack. Like, for instance, using mnemonics to remember vocabulary. Because if you think about it, no standard language learning course is going to teach you mnemonics. They're just going to teach you, you know, here's a list of words, go learn them. But how? How are we supposed to learn words? That's not something these courses ever teach us. They just presume that we have some magical method of learning vocabulary, and most of us don't. Most of us just use rote memorization of repeating it. So I also wanted to think about that side of things, like how do we do those things better, you know? And how can I give people the confidence? Because confidence was one of the biggest issues that I've always had as a beginner learner, especially earlier on when I started. And so we involved ways of doing that, and we eventually figured that this would be even better if we partnered with italki. And we're going to have like a section of italki especially for language hacking, like teachers who understand the course, because there are still going to be teachers who like you don't know which teachers are more appropriate for this method, because there's some very good teachers in italki who are more suited to teaching you how to write well, or giving you exercises and maybe teaching you the language through English without necessarily practicing it. And those teachers are great, but we wanted a different set of teachers who are more likely to speak to you even though you're making mistakes, to stick in the right language, to keep it in an encouraging tone, to help you get that momentum. And we kind of looked at every single aspect of being a beginner for the 4 languages, French, Spanish, Italian, German, to start with, and we'll continue the series in other languages later. And we kind of found all of those aspects, put them together in this one package. I got to put my voice into everything I needed to. But then we also had a lot of academic, like we had linguists contribute to it. We had native speakers contribute to it. We had other learners. And then my partner Lauren, she contributed to it from the beginner perspective, but also she has a background in like rhetoric from like she was in a PhD when I met her with that. So all of that kind of very clever stuff. So I feel like it's not just like my blog post or my book where I say, hey, this is what I do, give it a try. It's a little bit of that. It's a lot of that personality and that kind of tone, but with a lot of structure. And that's what I wanted to do when I got started with the language hacking course.
Sounds like a dream come true with these kind of courses, because it's really hard to find something that's not so jargony, or courses that teaches you things that doesn't matter at all about speak, especially when you focus on speaking. And there's so many of those. Okay, you try and like you spend your lifetime trying them, and you still can't really use some of them. Could be useless.
Yeah.
So how can using that course your course can help you be more fluent faster?
Yeah. So I think like what you just said is important. The difference for is that when in a lot of courses they do teach you a lot of stuff you don't need to know, not just jargon, but they decide what they think a beginner is likely to talk about, and you may end up having a whole chapter about how to get directions, for instance. Now, getting directions is important, but that has this mindset that everyone is learning a language to be a tourist. And I think that is not very helpful, because in this day and age, a lot of us use what we're doing now. We use Skype or Google Hangouts or whatever to have conversations over the internet. And I wanted to push the course and really focus on that style of learning. So I think that's missing in so many courses, because they presume you are just going to use this course and then go to the country. Whereas I presumed you're speaking with somebody over Skype. And if you're speaking over Skype, you're not going to be talking about, could you direct me to the supermarket? Because you're on the other side of the world. You don't know where my supermarket is. That's not really a realistic conversation. We're just going to talk about things we're interested in, about you, about me. And that's not going to follow a particular script necessarily. I can't give you that script because I can't tell you how to talk about you. You can't tell me how to talk about me. I always tell people, like, if I'm introducing myself, the word for blogger is never going to be in any beginner course, And I wasn't going to try and solve that problem by saying, here is every single profession in the world. But what I did want to solve was getting people what they needed to talk about things they wanted to talk about. So helping people fill in the gaps in ways relevant to them. And then as we do that, they get to talk about themselves better, which gives them that extra level of comfort in getting talking about things they're more likely to talk about. So to get to fluency, I think you need to start with that, what are you likely to talk about scenario. And a lot of other courses would be, here's how to ask for directions. Here's how to check into your flight, which is great when that's what you're going to be doing like in that one situation. You're going to check into a flight once. But you're going to have a conversation about what you do when you meet people on many different occasions. You're going to have discussions where you disagree with somebody. You want to kind of compare opinions. So these more kind of categories rather than specific examples, and then helping people find how they would do it in those situations. Because there is no set of conversations that every single person is likely to have. But if you can give them the tools to expand on what they could talk about, that would be how they get to fluency. Because in fluency, they're able to use the language to a comfortable level about what they would normally talk about, And I think that once they get that momentum, these courses, we don't get them up to fluency. We actually design the courses to be like precursors to the other, like Teach Yourself have a Teach Yourself Complete series. And that gets you to the B2 fluency level. And what we did is we wanted to get them definitely conversing so that they would have that momentum. And then they'd be able to add structure, like further structure, go into more detail. Because we didn't want the books to be like thick books about getting to B2. We wanted the books to be about how to converse, how to have that first real conversation with people. And then that would get them the momentum and the ideas to fill in the rest of the gaps and talk about everything else they want to talk about to get the fluency.
Got it. Great. So it sounds like your course is really good, especially we are focusing on speaking, and you know what most people need when you want to learn to speak a language. So I want to ask, how do you get the most out of your material, any material that you the most out of it?
Okay. Well, I would say that you need to have a good community. So, for instance, the Add1Challenge community, that's a very helpful group of people that you can learn the language with, and you can bounce ideas off one another. And we will be having a community where people bounce those kind of ideas off one another. It wouldn't be the same as the Add1Challenge because that's a very particular intensive period. This is more a general community where people can pop in whenever they like and then decide they're starting their project and they can see how everyone else is doing. And so this is one way that people would be using it. We actually tried really hard to get this course integrated with as much technology and modern tools that other courses don't tend to do. So I encourage people to, I don't say this course is going to solve all your problems, because that's the danger, that anytime you see something new come out, people will talk to you about it and say, this is all you'll ever need. We send people back to the internet. We say, go to Forvo to hear how things are pronounced. Go to Duolingo to have something to kind of check out while you're waiting for the bus. These extra tools that could be helping people are different depending on what your weaknesses are. And so, like, I can see in the chat window that, like, one person's saying that natives tend to speak too quickly. You know, how can we deal with that? So we thought about that as well. And essentially what I've found in those kinds of conversations is you don't want to jump straight in. So for instance, when I was learning Mandarin, I figured that the best way to be able to understand people speaking quickly would just be to listen to a lot of very fast spoken Mandarin. And I had the news on and I tried to listen to the news, and it was just impossible, because they were like talking about politics or talking about like things way too complicated for me at extraordinary speeds, just not possible to get through. And this is why I find it very interesting to work with traditional course makers, because you see the benefits and the things that don't necessarily help as much in the audio aspect. So I got to influence that a lot, and we talked about how we were going to do this, and you get like the native spoken audio when you get the course that I was in control of. I'm in the studio directing the natives on how to talk and how we want them to talk. So it's completely natural, but they are talking slowly. So initially, that's what I did, is to make sure that audio works that way. And if people use it with other tools, the podcast series that I was mentioning before, and if people, I have a blog post where I list all of the ones for all the different languages. If people search around, then that would mean that you ease yourself in. And how I fixed my Chinese problem of people speak too quickly, I can't understand, is I started with these audio lessons where they spoke very slowly. And now that's not how they're going to speak to me when I go out in the street. So people would think that's not very useful. But the trick is to get faster and more confident. And I kind of did that a little bit in our course, where we started very slowly, and then they kind of gradually made it a little bit faster for people as they went up. We didn't like super speed it up because there's only like 10 different units. But that's kind of what I did in my listening comprehension. So I listened to very slow spoken, very deliberate conversations, and then I would have that explained to me. I have a list of the words in the conversations, and we have that in the course, and we have like segmented parts of the phrases so you can hear them in separate chunks, because it's easier to, you hear the separate phrase a few times and then you know what that means. Whereas when it's just in the middle of a big conversation, you lose track of it. So you kind of get a mixture of the two. And then if you listen to that initial conversation again, you understand it better. And that part of it we incorporated, because that's something I got inspiration from in the podcast series. That's how I managed to reach a stage where people could speak to me at normal speeds in Mandarin and other languages I had learned, because I started slowly and sped it up. And that's the key, that you can only get to that fast speed, not if you start listening to people speaking at that fast speed, but if you start listening to them speaking intentionally slowly and then increase the speed over time. And that's kind of one example of how we kind of use that and integrate it into the courses to help people move along.
Great. I think small wins are very important, especially as beginners need a lot of those small wins to keep the momentum going. So that's a great point. All right, so why don't you, I know that you're having a mega sales going on. That's really awesome. So you want to share with us a little bit, and then we can go on Q&A.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the next couple of weeks, until we actually publish the books are published early September in the UK, late September in the US. We are encouraging people to get more copies of the book. And the reason for this is because, like I said, we want to continue this series for other languages. But to be able to do that, we need to prove to the publisher that people really care about these kinds of courses. And we have to make a lot of sales of the books. So to encourage people to do that, I'm saying if you get 4 copies of the book, we will give you like $700 worth of stuff, worth of ebook courses that help people learn things, and access to membership sites, and I'll give people italki credits. So like the 4 books would be like $15 or $20 or whatever the equivalent is, and after spending that much, you get several times that in value, and that way people get encouraged to actually buy them. And if we reach our goal, this would mean that the publisher will then come back to me and say, okay, Benny, now we want to do 20 languages with you in the next series. And I'll get to have fun with that and do like, I want to do Irish. I want to get it translated so I can help, like the German edition, help Syrian immigrants rather than just, Westerners learning German. I might help the opposite and get these in as many languages as we can. So to reach that stage, which requires the publisher to make the investment in the translators and so on, we need to make a lot of sales initially. So to encourage people for that, because it is that goal. It's not about making lots of money from selling the books, because that's not why I got into publishing. You don't publish books for lots of money unless you're J.K. Rowling. It's for getting it to as many people as possible. And we have other levels, 10 book sales, where people are really investing a lot into it and they get even more value out of it. So people should really check that out, see it all about what it is. And you simply just pre-order the books and then follow the instructions to send me the receipts, and we will set you up with enough products and courses and everything to keep you going for a very long time in your language.
Great. So can you give us the link in the chat box?
Yeah. Well, I can't type in the chat box right now, but it's very simply languagehacking.com.
Languagehacking.com.
Yeah, that'll show you the main page. You can click more information. You get a little preview. If you put your email in there, we will send you a look at the first conversations in Unit 1. And then anyone who pre-orders, even if they want just the one bit, if they pre-order it, we'll send you the conversations and the audio immediately. So you can already listen to hear what kind of stuff was happening in them. And then if you pre-order more, we will send you all the goodies. Just scroll down on languagehacking.com and you will see the many things we're giving away. And I really think it's a worthwhile investment. I had to work very hard to convince a lot of polyglots to give me the extra goodies to include. And of course, you were very generous to give us some discounts on the Add1Challenge. So people will see that as well as they're checking it out. So yeah, just go check out that site, and you will get all this free stuff for getting just a few copies of the book. And you can use those copies to give to your friends, because like you know, that's the whole thing about the Add1Challenge, about online communities. When you learn with people, you're more likely to make better progress. So you would have those extra copies to give to your friends to learn together. You know, even if you're not learning the same language, you and somebody else have this kind of united project and mission, and that really makes a difference. And that's why we want to get people to get multiple stuff. So check it out, and I'm sure you'll see lots of extra bonuses that you'd be interested in.
Great. So now let's go in the Q&A. You have any questions for Benny? You can ask. I have a few questions from my subscribers.
Sure.
One person asked, do you have any advice for dyslexia language learners?
Do I have any advice for what?
Dyslexia, like people who have trouble reading and they don't have trouble reading, learning, but they have trouble reading.
No, of course. So there are different styles of learning, and it's not necessarily whether you would have dyslexia or not, but some people are pure audio learners. And in that case, they don't really like learning through texts, you know? And this kind of aligns with people who are dyslexic, who just can't learn through text very easily. So you can see that as a strength. I always tell people, try to see what your strengths are. So if you're dyslexic, then think about that in a different way and say, you are an audio-based learner. You're someone who is likely to have strengths in that. So for instance, if you check out Idausa Ness's Mimic method, and this is his like premium stuff worth like $300 for the languages that I picked. That's included in our big giveaway, and I was very happy to have that in the sets because Idausa teaches pure audio, pure sound. So you don't have to learn how to spell the words. You just hear the sounds and you mimic them. And this is a strength because when people focus on the written version, they're more likely to maintain their accent because they try to pronounce that written version like they would in their mother tongue. So if someone has this dyslexia and they have trouble to follow along in written texts, then just speak. You know, try to remember when you're on a Skype session, instead of writing down your notes, try to record it. Use your smartphone to record the session, especially what you're saying, and then listen to it again afterwards. When you hear yourself say, "My name is Benny," and then just repeat that over and over again, and make it all about your notes are audio-based. And even the likes of Anki, you could still make decks which are audio-based, and it can be your voice, it can be your teacher's voice. So there's a lot of resources you can do that don't involve the words written out.
See it as your strength. Love it. Love it. All right, so there's a question coming in now. Okay, let's go with Judy first. I read other books from authors who became fluent Arabic speakers and how they did it. How is your book different from those fluent speakers, the authors? But we can't really answer that.
Yeah, how's a bit different too.
We can't
speak fluent Arabic.
We don't know what.
Yeah. It depends on the person, and I mean, it is different to other language learning methods. I would say other methods in general. I don't know about the specific Arabic teachers Judy might be mentioning, but in general, I think that most courses try to give equal amounts of attention to speaking, reading, listening, and writing. And these are the four main pillars that can make a successful language learner. Now, I feel that splitting your attention 4 ways as a beginner is a bad idea. I think that splitting your attention between those 4 things when you're a higher level learner, especially upper intermediate and advanced, is very important. And that's what you have to do if you want to show that you have that level in the CEFLR exams. And I have spent a lot of time working on my listening, my writing, my grammar, and so on. But as a beginner, you should not do that. I firmly believe as a beginner, you need to focus on the spoken language. Because if you think about it, this is how we all learned all of our mother tongues. As babies, we were not writing things down. You know, we weren't checking our grammar. We were just speaking, making lots of mistakes, and getting feedback and improving gradually. So I think my course is different to a lot of others because the other aspects, the writing and reading and so on, those get squashed down to about like 2% of what's in our course, and 98% is about speaking and understanding spoken responses. I'm working on that to improve communication.
All right, so next question. For intermediate level, what do you see the pros or cons for speaking with a tutor versus an exchange partner?
Speaking with a tutor versus what?
Versus speaking with an exchange partner.
I would say that it depends on a few factors, but if your budget allows for it, I would personally always choose a tutor. And keep in mind, your budget may well allow for it because that tutor's in another country where they may be just a few dollars an hour or whatever it may be. A language exchange partner is, especially with a lot of cultures, they're going to be very encouraging. I think that's very useful as a beginner. As a beginner, you need encouragement. You need to get that momentum. But because we're looking at, the question was about intermediate level, I tend to do, I would actually encourage way less language exchanges at the intermediate level and way more structured learning with a teacher. Because a teacher is way more motivated to correct you. They have that level of precision that they hear you make a mistake, they're going to point it out. Whereas a language exchange is just some other person who wants to learn the language themselves, and they will just keep saying, awesome, great, you're doing amazing. You know, oh, you're never making mistakes. And that's fine for your level of confidence. But I think normal people are not as likely to point out consistent mistakes, and a tutor is. And that's fine as a beginner because you don't want to hear all your mistakes as a beginner, but intermediate and up, you want to start ironing out those mistakes. So I would always recommend sticking with a tutor.
Great. So how do you speed up your rate of speech, especially with language with many cases like Hungarian, Finnish, Estonian?
This is an interesting question because I believe that regardless of the language, your speed in how you speak is not actually that important. It's more, it's not like how many words you squeeze into a certain amount of time. It's more about your hesitations and your overall way of acting. And whenever you think of good orators, people who give speeches, you're not thinking who can squeeze the most words into 10 seconds. Because a lot of, it's actually like a technique that really good speakers learn is how to put pauses into their talks. And a lot of the most interesting people that when you listen to them, that they get your attention, you want to hear them speak. It's not because they're saying a lot, it's because they're giving you these kind of really intentional pauses. So I always joke about this, and I gave a little section in my book, that I tried to think like, what would Jack Sparrow do? Pirates of the Caribbean, where he has these like weird, dramatic, crazy pauses, where he'd be like, you know, between sentences. And, you know, obviously you don't need to do that level of crazy, but there is that kind of aspect to it, that to speak well, don't try to speak quickly, you know, try to get the confidence that you are not spending a whole minute just to say, I'm from Ireland, you know. Obviously you don't want to push it that far, but do think that those pauses are okay. Just try to make them, think of them as orator pauses that help your speech sound more confident.
Great. Okay, next question. Time management. How would you advise integrating language learning into a, let's say, very busy, typical working period schedule?
Yeah, very, very good question. It's always a problem. I still suffer from time management issues myself, which is why I was a couple of minutes late for this. So I find that What works for me during my language projects is, of course, making the bookings with native speakers, because I feel like we're all very busy. I'm super busy. I got like 3,000 emails a day. I'm a very busy guy. But during my language projects, when I have a session booked and it's in my calendar that I'm going to speak with the teacher at 8 p.m., I will make the time, because it's not about, you know, here's an app, download this app, and suddenly you will be able to organize all your hours much better. It's the case that necessity makes you better at time management. So when you have that booking, you will know, I'm going to speak to this person, so maybe I'm not going to watch my TV show and I'm going to just try to learn those phrases that I didn't know the last time ahead of my spoken session. So there's that, and then when you're actually studying, you can, you know, you can use the time management techniques. I like Pomodoro, because I'm the kind of person who cannot focus for 2 hours. If you only have 2 hours, like a week, that you need to be learning the language, spending the entire 2 hours with the one book is not something that I can do. So you split that up. You have like 20, 25 minutes focus, and then a 5-minute break. And that helps. Like those 5-minute breaks, you might think it's time lost, but it helps a lot with your level of focus. There's many things on time management that are very interesting, that apply to language learning, but I think necessity is the most important one.
I agree. Once you put it in the schedule, and especially if somebody else waiting for you, you show up.
Yeah. And I saw one of the questions just pop up that someone was having issues getting the book from Australia. That's because the link we have that goes to Australia, the book hasn't been put on Amazon yet, but it is in, I think, Book Depository, the more popular sites people use in Australia to get the book. So just check that out, search for language hacking, you will see it there.
Great. So let's do one more. Okay, let's do one more. Let's see. What's your opinion regarding intensive language courses program? Usually in country of target language, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. So I think it can be a mixed bag, because the marketing for that particular course will tell you it's the best course, will tell you that you get full immersion, but some of them tend to be very expensive because they might be all-inclusive, so your accommodation and food is included, and they would pay, they would actually get commission on that. So they're getting you the expensive accommodation and the expensive food. So I think it's a lot of money in many cases that you don't necessarily have to spend, because what they do is they, the good ones at least, if you presume it's a good one, they give you that necessity of forcing you to speak the language. But I think if you find a way to make yourself have that necessity, you don't need to spend $5,000 to go off and live in a country for a month and have these intensive courses. What you can do instead is what I did in previous projects I had, like in Brazil, before I went to Egypt, I wanted to learn Egyptian Arabic. I just decided this corner of my house for 5 hours a day, I am not allowed to use any language but Egyptian Arabic. I listened to podcasts, I listened to streamed radio, and I would have of course, my Skype sessions. So that kind of thing is something you can emulate. I think there is a problem for a lot of people. They're not able to initially set that up themselves, so they have to spend a lot of money to go fly to the country. But another problem is, if it's not a good one, you might go all that way, and then the problem is you're with a bunch of other foreigners. You're with other people who are taking that course, and you may end up you know, having your intensive part of the day, but in the evening, when you're relaxing, you're just going to speak English. You're going to, you know, see another American or British person or Australian, and you're going to slip back to English in the evenings, which kind of defeats the purpose. So I would always tell people, try virtual immersion. Some of those intensive courses are excellent, but I would do it over Skype. I would try to set it up yourself. It'll be way less expensive, and it's something you can maintain over the long term.
That's a great point. I think it's totally possible to create an intensive immersion environment. We had one person, Kevin Richardson, who created a 1-month immersion that he to only speak Japanese even with his mother.
That's great.
So his mother would be like, "What are you talking? I don't speak Japanese. Stop it." But he's living in Japan now, living his life. You know, living his dream. So
Yeah,
totally
that works very effectively. You know Scott Young. He happened to be living in Valencia, Spain, at the same time Lauren and me were. And his project was Spanish only, no English at all, with anyone. And so, like, the first time that he ever met my partner, she doesn't speak Spanish. So the problem was that he would have to maintain his project. But we found a way. Like, I was the interpreter. Anytime he said something in Spanish, I would translate it for him to her. And then she would speak in English, and he understood English, so he wouldn't need a translation. But that way he maintained it. So you would actually be surprised how you can find ways to avoid speaking English if you're clever enough.
Totally. There's always a way. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time, Benny. So everybody go check out language hacking course or languagehacking.com. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching.
And I'm going to have some more live hangouts myself on like YouTube Live. I'm going to do like Periscope hangouts. So just if you're not there already, join my email list. You can see it at the end of any of my blog posts. Just join that, and I will email you about other live hangouts. I'll be happy to answer more questions from people. But otherwise, definitely check out languagehacking.com. And I really appreciate people investing in the course. It's going to kind of give us that boost to show people that language hacking is the future. And then we're going to be able to do this for so many other languages. And I really appreciate people helping me to give it that boost.
Great. Thank you, Benny.
All right.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care. Bye.